I'll start with this poem. I wrote this poem when the bombs were dropping on Gaza, and I was the media spokesperson for the coalition, doing a lot of the organizing. And we had stayed up to about 6 o'clock in the morning, perfecting every soundbite. And by the end, if you're Palestinian, you know most Palestinians get tired and start pronouncing our P's as B's. So we become Palestinians by the end of the day. So I was practicing my P's all night. And the next morning, one of the journalists asked me, "Don't you think it would all be fine if you just stopped teaching your children to hate?" I did not insult the person. I was very polite. But I wrote this poem as a response to these types of questions we Palestinians always get. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits, filled enough with statistics to counter measured response. And I perfected my English and I learned my UN resolutions. But still, he asked me, "Ms. Ziada, don't you think everything would be resolved if you would just stop teaching so much hatred to your children?" Pause. I look inside of me for strength to be patient, but patience is not at the tip of my tongue as the bombs drop over Gaza. Patience has just escaped me. Pause. Smile. We teach life, sir. Rafif, remember to smile. Pause. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians teach life after they have occupied the last sky. We teach life after they have built their settlements and apartheid walls. After the last skies, we teach life, sir. But today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits. And just give us a story, a human story. You see, this is not political. We just want to tell people about you and your people. So give us a human story. Don't mention that word apartheid and occupation. This is not political. You have to help me as a journalist to help you tell your story, which is not a political story. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre. How about you give us a story of a woman in Gaza who needs medication? How about you? Do you have enough bone-broken limbs to cover the sun? Hand me over your dead and give me the list of their names in 1,200 word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits and move those that are desensitized to terrorist blood. But they felt sorry. They felt sorry for the cattle over Gaza. So I give them UN resolutions and statistics, and we condemn and we deplore and we reject. And these are not two equal sides, occupier and occupied, and 100 dead, 200 dead, and 1,000 dead. And between that war crime and massacre, I vent out words and smile, not exotic. Smile, not terrorist. And I recount 100 dead, 200 dead, 1,000 dead. Is anyone out there? Will anyone listen? I wish I could wail over their bodies. I wish I could just run barefoot in every refugee camp and hold every child, cover their ears so they wouldn't have to hear the sound of bombing for the rest of their life the way I do. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre, and let me just tell you, there is nothing your UN resolutions have ever done about this. And no soundbite I come up with, no matter how good my English gets, no soundbite will bring them back to life. No soundbite will fix this. We teach life, sir. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians wake up every morning to teach the rest of the world life, sir. Thank you.
Wow. She's taken my breath away and makes me rethink the status quo as far as the whole issue around life and death, occupation, genocide, and all of those issues come up. That was Rafif Ziadeh, a poem she's written a while back, and I just felt it was so appropriate to listen to that poem once again before we talk with Jeff Mackler in the United States. He's a political analyst, and we're going to talk about the Biden administration's approval of a sale of $735 million in precision-guided weapons to Israel, raising red flags for some House Democrats who are part of the shifting debate over the US government support for the Israeli government. And not only raising the flag for these House Democrats, but I think raising the flag for the rest of the world. The question being asked is why? Why, the approval of this $735 million sale, and why this just shows clearly that there could be an escalation in this situation, in this war, this genocide against the Palestinians. Jeff Mackler, morning, welcome to the program. Your thoughts on this matter? I understand, I've been told that you're an anti-war activist, and you must be shocked and horrified by this act by the Biden administration. Jeff, I can't hear you. Did you get my question and my introduction? Okay, I can't hear Jeff at all. Let's just see if we can move around some buttons and do some magic on our side. If you can just give us a minute there, please, Jeff, we're going to just try reconnecting up with you. Okay, you're listening to News and Views with me, Julie Ali. We do have Jeff Mackler online from the United States to talk to us about the issue around the $735 million sale in precision-guided weapons to Israel by the Biden administration. Jeff Mackler is an anti-war activist, and he's going to respond to my opening statement and questions put to him regarding this issue. Jeff, morning, welcome. Morning from South Africa. It's probably middle of the night in your part of the world. Welcome. Can you hear me loudly and clearly?
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be with you. Can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you for waking up at this ungodly hour to be talking with us.
Okay. Well, let me get some facts in. First of all, we've had the largest demonstrations supporting Palestine in the history of the United States.
Wow.
In New York City, 10,000 in Los Angeles, 8,000 in San Francisco, and 10,000 in other cities across the country. People are outraged. As far as the financial support, the truth is that the United States allocates $3.8 billion a year to Israel, the largest amount of so-called foreign aid to any nation on earth. And they adopted a 10-year to grant Israel $38 billion over this period. And you ask the reason. The reason is because Israel serves as the U.S. gendarme in the Middle East. Israel wantonly bombs other countries, whether they be Iraq or Syria, in order to interest of the United States government.
Mm-hmm. So basically what you're saying is that Israel is looking after the United States' interest in the Middle East. That would be all of the natural resources. And as far as the US is concerned, supposedly also keeping the peace in that part of the world, which you and I know is not in fact true. Yes, they are taking care of the United States' other interest, and that is their material interests. Not that one wonders how they lay claim to all of that. However, they're not serving the Middle East well at all, are they?
That's been the case since the formation of the State of Israel in 1948. The United States has been the main protector of the Zionist state. My view of Israel is the same as it was in 1994 with South Africa. We were against U.S. aid to the apartheid state of South Africa. We were against the U.S. support to the British and French and Portuguese and Spanish colonialization of Africa and Asia and the Middle East. Palestine was a conquered nation by the British in the secret Sykes-Picot Treaty of 1916 at the end of World War I, and British took Palestine as its own, quote, mandate or colony and began the process of sending Jewish people from Britain to Palestine to colonize it in order for it to, quote, civilize the place for British colonialism. The Zionist leaders based in Israel pledged to keep Palestine as English as England. They claimed that Palestine was a land without people for a people without land. So they began the process of buying British-owned absentee land for Jewish people and colonizing Palestine until 1948, a UN-approved partition took over Palestine and granted the Jewish people, who in 1960 had 3% of the land, 55% of Palestine. And when the Palestinian people and the people of the Middle East revolted, they conducted a war, at the end of which, in 1948, 75% of historic Palestine became Israel. And then another war in 1967, 85%. And today, 90% of historic Palestine, with millions of refugees, Palestinians living in squalid UN refugee camps in the surrounding countries around the world. So from my point of view, as a representative of United National Anti-War Coalition, we don't recognize the legitimacy of the Zionist state in the same manner that we didn't recognize the legitimacy of the apartheid South African state, or French West Equatorial Africa, or British Guyana, or British India. None of these colonized countries had any legitimacy from the point of view of the people whose land was stolen, colonized, and people were enslaved. So what we're seeing in the United States today is absolutely unprecedented. We're seeing young people and coalitions supporting Palestinian rights with banners that read Palestine from the river to the sea, which was originally the Zionist slogan, Israel from the river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean would be 100% Jewish. The Palestinian people don't recognize the legitimacy of the Zionist state.
Okay, so Jeff, let's look at this latest approval of the $735 million weapons sale. What sort of message is it giving to the rest of the world? And the timing of the announcement of the sale, a week before the unrest started in, or the atrocity against the Palestinian people started by the Israelis.
It was the Biden administration's message that the policy followed by the Trump administration, which is the non-recognition of Palestine, is the same. That is, the two countries depend on Israel to be their military base and gendarme to keep the peace for U.S. imperial interests in the Middle East. So Biden's signal was no different. He said he was going to be the candidate of peace, and his first act was to send additional thousands of troops to Syria. United States has troops in 100 countries, occupying 1,100 military bases around the world. They are there to protect the interests of American corporations, to exploit the poor people of the world. That's the reason why we exist in the United States as the United National Anti-War Coalition. We are against U.S. colonial interests, the wars against working people abroad and the working people at home. I don't know if you recall, but last summer we had the largest demonstrations in the history of the United States in defense of Black lives. 20 million people in 2,000 cities mobilized against systemic racism that prevails in the United States from East Coast to West Coast. And amazingly, the people who were in the streets these past few days are carrying Black Lives Matter and Palestinian Lives Matter banners and placards and chanting across the country in every city in solidarity with the Palestinian people.
And that's very heartwarming, but it's clearly not enough to end the genocide in that part of the world. We also have a question around, why is no one calling for a ceasefire? Where is the voice of the United Nations, or are they actually voiceless? Are they just a group of talking heads and can't really get anything going? So what needs to happen to have a ceasefire? What needs to happen for the Palestinians to get back the land that was stolen from them? What needs to happen for the ethnic cleansing or the genocide to stop in that part of the world? Or is America all too powerful and all too important and have way too much sway in the Middle East and other third world countries for these atrocities to come to an end?
Well, first and foremost, on your first question, the Security Council of the United Nations met yesterday, and the United States refused to issue any statement or take any action whatsoever. They simply closed the session down. And the one country, as you know, any country who is on the Security Council can veto any actions. So you will not have any help from United Nations. United Nations sanctified the formation of the State of Israel and the dispossession of the Palestinian people from their homeland. That's the first. The second thing is, as with the struggle for Black equality in the United States, or the struggle against climate change, against racism, poverty, unemployment, and endless U.S. wars, our answer is the only solution is the organization and bringing to bear the power of the American people. They are against these wars. They have no interest in them. They are fighting for their own jobs and well-being against racism and sexism and poverty at home. So we start with the proposition that the working people of the world have to take the power into their own hands, have to be the actors, like the South African people forced the end of the apartheid government, or at least in part of its worst policies. The Palestinians, on their part, are beginning the process of organization and winning allies. People on every border country of Palestine demonstrated on the borders, if not threatening to enter the country in solidarity with their people. 100,000 people mobilized in London a few days ago in solidarity with the Palestinians. You know, you're talking today to an old guy. I was one of the activists at the time of the Vietnam War, when everybody said, how can the United States ever be defeated and forced to leave Vietnam? And we built a massive movement that won the hearts and minds of the American people. We won 3/4 of the population to demand out now. And the United States had to leave. tragically
Jeff,
not.
I do
before
apologize. Jeff, I am so sorry. We're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but I hope to talk to you again sometime in the near future. You're a good man. Thank you so much for being with us on air
Thank
this
you
morning.
so much. Glad to be with you.
Bye-bye.